Hi everyone, welcome back. I've got something really exciting for you today. Recently, I was able to sit down with Christensen from the Visual Studio team to discuss the latest update to Visual Studio 2026. This update is packed with all kinds of cool performance improvements and obviously a lot of AI enhancements and other related things. So stick around, check out the interview. If you want more details, link for downloads and blog posts and whatnot is in the description. Give it a try, let me know what you think. And as always, happy coding. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the channel. Before we dive in discussing Visual Studio, I know a lot of people will probably recognize your name from the large number of Visual Studio extensions that you've built over the years. I know that's probably where I first encountered you. For those people who may not be familiar with you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Matt Kristensen, and thanks for having me on your show here. Yeah, I've been on the Visual Studio team for 15 years in different capacities. I started on the ASP.NET team, which was on the .NET team, not on the Visual Studio team, but my responsibility was to build the web tooling in Visual Studio, for the ASP.NET web developer. So the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all that stuff. This is before, was it before Razor? I think it was, yeah, it was before Razor.
Way back.
It was way back, yeah. So it's, 2010.
Okay.
So I've been doing that, and I've been working on all sorts of aspects, including the Visual Studio extensibility story, and I call myself the junk drawer of Visual Studio. I'm involved in a little bit of this and that, and it changes on a weekly basis. So I enjoy it, and
that's awesome.
That's me. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, what drove the decision for a new major version of Visual Studio versus just continuing with Visual Studio 2022? I know we've been getting updates and lots of great stuff coming there. So why the kind of major version update?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when you think about Visual Studio 2022, just the name alone make it sound old.
Yep.
But we've been updating it. Every quarter we ship a new update, and so there's absolutely nothing old about Visual Studio 2022. It's very modern and very capable, and it's a fantastic IDE. And now we're actually, since June, we're shipping on a monthly basis instead of a quarterly. So
okay.
we have turned up the frequency of our feature updates. Just to be even more up to date, more relevant, be faster to market, faster from idea to to people's desktops. And so, but it's called Visual Studio 2022. So even though it's new and we update it all the time, it has that kind of notion of, oh, it's old. It sounds old, of course, right? Because it's 4 years old almost.
Yeah.
And so, we shipped it in November 2021. So it's coming up on 4 years, right? And some people can't get around that, and I understand fully. It's not a good look. So that's one big part of it. But usually what we do a major version is because there's something that is significant. Either it could be that we have to drop some sort of backwards compatibility, and that warrants us to cut a new major version. Or it could be other like significant things. And so this time around, we have some significant features that allows us to move forward. It's actually not backwards compatibility. This version is probably the most backwards compatible major version that we've ever shipped.
Oh, okay.
So that's not the reason this time around, but it has to do with a bunch of some of our key features that we're enabling in such a way that it creates kind of a need for a new major version. So for instance, if we take something like Copilot, Copilot has maybe felt a little bit like it was something that was bolted on, and it's a chat window, and you go do things in the chat window, right? And that's the Copilot experience. It's like separate from the rest of the workflow that you got. But as things progress and as innovation keeps going and seems to be going faster and faster, we need to be able to put the AI kind of deep into Visual Studio. And in order for us to do that, we have to kind of tear apart some of the things that Test Explorer and the profiler and how we do debugging and all sorts of aspects of Visual has to be touched in a way that allow us to get AI to understand the deeper workings of all these aspects of the IDE. Because when it knows all those things, it can be immensely more helpful. And Visual Studio has a very interesting and very unique capability in that it knows all those different aspects of your workflow. Like if you take other like code editors, for instance, they're usually made up of like a core set of features, and then you put different extensions on top of that, right?
Yep.
But because you don't know what extensions are there and you don't own those extensions, you don't write those and then change, independently of each other and so on. It's hard to create an experience that include the features they provide as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So if you want to know everything about debugging, profiling, testing, and so on and so forth, you kind of have to know more about the full context. And that's where an IDE really comes in and really shines, is that it knows that much larger context. And so in order to kind of create that sort of ambient AI where it's not like a separate thing, you go to the chat window and you ask it to do something for you, but maybe it's something that's kind of more organic, it's more natural, it's where you are anyway, and it's going to not be in your way, but it's going to understand what you're doing and it can be helpful for those specific things while you're doing that thing. It's not, you don't separate out and do something else.
Right.
So that's one major aspect of that. And then performance is another one. So we've really been able to do something with performance this time around for solution load, startup time. Hitting F5 like MS Build is faster. Like all that integration around how we're handling, files and folders and projects and solutions have all gotten a huge performance boost. And so that's another reason why we want to do a new major version, is because it kind of changes very deep in sort of the architecture of Visual Studio that allows for some of these changes.
Okay. Just one more thing, and then we can put VS 2022 kind of aside. What is the expected update cadence? Because I know VS 22 is going to stay in support for, I think it's the mainstream end of life is like 2027 or somewhere out in that vicinity. I assume it's still going to be receiving security fixes and whatnot through there. Is there going to be any feature improvements there, or is everything, or is it kind of going to be considered feature complete once this release goes out?
Yeah, traditionally the way we do it when we have major versions is that we stop kind of the feature work on the previous major version and focus all new feature work on new major version. And that is not necessarily true this time around. We may keep some things more frequently updated on the 2022, things that are of strategic importance and that has a lot of competitiveness in the space. So it could be around Copilot, for instance. It could be around other things like performance and whatnot. Might be getting some updates into 2022, into this 17.14 version that we're in right now.
Okay.
So we'll still see monthly updates, coming in, even though we're now in preview of 2026. We're not to the GA yet, right? We're not the general available, the public finished release of 2026. And at least up until then, we're going to continue seeing monthly updates to 2022 and probably beyond that. But usually what we do is that we make sure that we fix bugs. Yep. We do that for quite a few years on the previous major version. And then at some point down the line, we say, okay, now we only do security fixes.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a kind of a long support lifetime for any major version of Visual Studio where we make sure we fix bugs and we take care of security issues. So that's not gonna change for 2022. For 2026, we're gonna continue that monthly release cadence. So and that's kind of exciting, and when we're probably going to turn up the volume on that with the amount of features we're able to do on a monthly cadence. So it's something we're all very excited for, because there's no longer that kind of wait. Sometimes we've been waiting to ship something. We know that users are asking for it and we have it, but we have to wait till we're shipping everything else. Maybe it's a month later or 2 months later. And we no longer have that. So it's very nice for us that we're able to turn around these kind of features and bug fixes and whatnot super quick.
Yeah, reaching that whole continuous delivery approach always feels amazing when you can start getting stuff out much quicker and shipping. You kind of mentioned some of this. What do you see as kind of the biggest productivity wins that your average developer is going to kind of feel day to day? You mentioned the Copilot really integrated into a lot of those tooling and workflows as far as like debugging and editing. But brand new developer first coming into it, what's kind of that big win that really hooks them on that day one?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things. So we fully understand that, Copilot is not, everyone is not interested, or some people can't use it for whatever reason. And that's fine. We're not going to be like, hey, if you're not using Copilot, there's no reason to use Visual Studio. That is definitely not where we're going. And so there's a lot of stuff that's just general developer happiness kind of oriented features, right? And you're going to see a whole bunch of things. We talked about performance a little bit. I think that actually is one of the key things. I want to elaborate a little bit. So one of the things that we know have caused people some trouble is, you take an action in Visual Studio, and Visual Studio might freeze for like a second, or 2 seconds, or 5 seconds, sometimes longer. And the reason it does that is because the action you're taking is performing some sort of computation on the UI thread. And that blocks the UI thread from doing anything else, like opening a menu or a hover effect over a button or whatever it might be like. And that's what a frozen state looks like. And so what we've been able to do is to move a lot of stuff off of the UI thread. Things that previously was on the UI thread is off. So you'll see the responsiveness of Visual Studio, it's kind of different than performance.
Yep.
But it is in that category. But you'll see that the responsiveness is so much greater. Like, you're not blocked. You can always do other things. You don't have to kind of wait for Visual Studio to finish on anything. And so opening a document is among those. You open a document, it just opens immediately. And there's no delay. And then maybe the language service kicks in, or the underlying, Roslyn colorizer for the text comes in like milliseconds later or something like that, which was before a frozen thing.
Okay.
But it's not anymore. And so the feel of it is so much more light. It feels like a much lighter product. And so I think actually that's a huge benefit. But it's just one aspect of what we call fundamentals. So, we can build all these fancy features, but if the foundation of the house is not solid and fantastic and great, then it doesn't matter what kind of walls and roof you put on, right? It's going to all come down at some point. And so things like paper cuts, things that, have annoyed users for a long time, bugs they run into, and especially small things. And this is where we've kind of changed our approach in the past couple of years, in that, when we get a bunch of user feedback saying, hey, can you fix this? Can you fix that? Can you change this behavior? Can you add this new behavior? And we're looking at these and we're like, okay, now we have to prioritize which one of them should we do first. It's very easy to kind of look at the ones that you think has the biggest impact first. That's how you usually will decide what goes up on your backlog, what's the highest priority.
Yeah.
But I think what we might sometimes have failed to fully understand is that the small little things that annoys you, in the morning, and then again before lunch, and maybe you're encountering this little thing twice more during the day. Well, you're using Visual Studio every day, 8 hours, maybe 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. These small things are all of a sudden not very small. They become big. And and some of them, we call them paper cuts, death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yep.
Like it can become so overwhelming when you have a lot of small little things. Like one little thing doesn't harm you, right? But enough of them, and it's like a horrible experience. And so we've really been like going after all these things, and some of them are like super small. And it's about like changing your approach in how you prioritize and how you understand impact of each of these things. And so if we look back at the past 12 months, we've been working on Visual Studio 2026 for quite a while. We didn't just work on it yesterday, right? So if you look at the past 12 months, we fixed 4,500 user submitted bugs. That's 18 bug fixes per workday. 18. That's insane.
That is incredible.
And when it comes to feature requests, we've done 290. And so that's actually 1.2 feature requests implemented per workday in the past 12 months. And the trend is going up. We're not seeing this kind of flattening out or anything. We see that it's going up and up. So that trend is continuing, and it makes me really happy as a Visual Studio user myself. I'm very happy to see these kind of small things. Well, they're not all small; some of them are bigger things too, of course. But it makes me really happy to know that all this is coming in. So there's a whole category of fixes, tweaks, and features that are just foundational in nature that you'll find everywhere in 2026. So I can mention like explicit things like, oh, you can easily change the file encoding of your files from the status bar like you can in other editors, for instance. All the new color themes that makes it even a more personal experience to use Visual Studio, or whatever it might be. The line number margin is smaller, so you have more horizontal space. That's a nice one too. The list is really, really long, and some of these things are very small. Some of them are bigger. Some of them apply to you, some don't. Right? It might not bother you, but it bothers other people. And so your mileage may vary. You're going to be excited about a certain subset, and it's going to be different than my subset, and so on and so forth. So, but when I look at the release notes that I'm working on right now, it's a very long list. It's a very long list.
That is a big
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just speaking to your point there about the number of things fixed, I know I filed probably half a dozen things to the feedback hub over the last 12 months, and I think every single one of them got fixed fairly quickly, which was,
Nice.
again, that death by 1,000 paper cuts, having those things that were bothering me just go away really does, it feels nice, and it also provides a lot of confidence back to me that, hey, my feedback is actually being acted upon and things are getting better, right? It makes me want to jump back into the Visual Studio a little bit more. Like I know you commented on a couple specific features there. Is there any feature that you absolutely love that you don't know if it gets enough attention or highlights in the release notes or similar?
Yes, there's quite a few. Are you talking specifically of 2026 or of just in general?
I was thinking 2026, but we can go in general. I realize I don't know how many people realize how many of your extensions have kind of obsoleted themselves by virtue of getting implemented inside of Visual Studio, which oftentimes I found myself actually uninstalling your extensions because of that, which is a great thing, right? Like the thing that I love is now first party citizen. But kind of what are those ones that you love?
Yeah, so let's take one that is now built in, but it's not on by default because it's not for everybody. But I think most people will like it. Maybe we should turn it on. Maybe we can have people comment if they think this should be turned on by default or not. I had an extension at some point called Rainbow Braces. So it colorizes brace pairs and parentheses so that if you have nested if statements, you can kind of see what the closing parentheses, which opening one it matches with, because they would have different colors. And that we built that in a while ago, like a year ago or something like that. I think something like that. But I still get a lot of downloads of that extension. Like it's immensely popular. People really love this feature, but they don't know it's built in.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people to, if they think this would be handy. It's also great for accessibility, by the way. It's not just kind of a nice colorized thing. It has like some cognitive implications that are positive. But if you go to tools options, go to settings, you can under text editor, you can enable that. So try that out. I think that's a nice hidden feature that most people will benefit from.
Yeah, no, that is definitely one that I definitely turn on, and you are right. It almost feels like a lower cognitive load when you're trying to read through, especially deeply nested stuff. Ideally, you don't have that, but hey, real world code exists, and it happens all the time.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. So I guess diving back in, because Copilot is definitely a very big part of this whole release. Can you talk about some of the more impactful Copilot integrations that are in 2026?
Yep. So when it comes to the Copilot and that deep integration I was talking about, you can kind of think of the first wave or the first release of 2026 as kind of the foundational aspect where we build in the infrastructure that allows us to now build these features on top of it in a much more deeper, ambient, and kind of natural way. The one feature we shipped that takes advantage of this here in the very beginning is the profiler agent. And it's absolutely a phenomenal thing. So we know that people don't really use the profiler in Visual Studio. We've had it for many years. Mm-hmm. It's in Community, Pro, Enterprise. It's it's in all the SKUs. It's not just an enterprise thing. It exists for everybody, and we know people don't really use it. But if I were to just give an explanation of what it is real quick, it's basically a way for you to it will instrument your running app with like some sort of benchmark code, instrumentation code, so it knows what's going on, how long different method call takes, and how the lines of code, how long they take to execute, how much memory is consumed, how much CPU cycles, and so on. And so it will be able to provide you with a flame chart and with a list of the hot paths, like which are the expensive paths in your running application that you may want to optimize to get better performance, or lower memory consumption, or whatever it might be, something that has to do with performance. And then the problem often is, first of all, people don't really use this technology, this profiler. But even if you do, how do you actually optimize your code such that it runs faster? Some people know, some people don't. Most people don't. Like, how do you optimize a link query, or whatever it might be, something that is are using a hash set over like a dictionary, or the different data types, and like there's a whole bunch of things here. This is just what this is the level of my understanding, right? I don't even go lower level than that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people that's the case. So the profiler agent, what it allows us to do is to say, it's to ask the profiler agent in the Copilot to say, can you look at my performance and figure out how to improve it? Oh. And it will add benchmarks if you don't have any, to measure fully like different things. It can then run the profiler, it can run your methods, and then with the benchmarks, you can run them like 1,000 times, for instance, on your methods and whatnot, to really get like some real good data. And then it just comes back and says, hey, I've run this. Here are your issues. Here is my plan of how I want to optimize this. And it takes like a minute, 2 minutes, depending on the size of your solution and all that type of stuff. And it can come back and it can significantly improve the performance of your app. It is absolutely staggering. And what I really, really like about it is the way it does it, it doesn't just go ahead and do it and you don't know what changes were. You're kind of along the way seeing everything. You can even interact with it and say, oh, no, do that approach instead of this one, or I don't want you to do it that way. I don't understand it. So do it see if you can find another way that I understand that is still improving the performance. You can say stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So you're in the behind the steering wheel the whole time. But what it does is that it teaches you all these things too at the same time. So you become smarter. So that the next time you're coding, in a certain way, you remember, oh yeah, if I use, a hash set here, then that's going to be much faster than if I did it this other way. And so you become better. And that is to me very exciting, because that's one of the parts of the AI thing that I really think is like one of the most amazing part, is the way that we become better. We used to call it like, hey, we're, AI is going to 10x us. I think that's kind of a weird type of thing. But the idea was that, hey, AI is this limitless pill. Remember the movie Limitless? Yeah. You take this pill and your brain grows and you can do everything, right? Something to that effect. That's kind of a vague, weird thing. I think when we take a concrete example and look at what that could be, hey, you learn how to be better at writing optimal code. I think that's immensely fantastic. And we're going to do the same with debugger. You know how there's always like someone on your team that's better debugger at you than you are. And if
Yep.
sometimes you hit a wall, you go to that person and they help you debug because they know how to do WinDBG. They know how to do like figure out like async stack traces and stuff, and call stack rather, and figure out, you know, these highly complicated things.
Yeah.
But these are perfect examples of where AI can come in and help us if it understands everything in your app, in the running app, in your code, and can make these recommendations, find these issues that you're seeing while you're debugging and so on, and solve the problem. And you're there along with it, like you're doing it together, and so you're learning along the way. And I really like that. That means that you're now the expert. You don't have to go to that person anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so that empowerment is like absolutely phenomenal. It's the same. Do you remember when you first started coding and you realized that you could code anything you can
Yes.
dream of? For me, it's a moment in time. I was like 19 or something, and I'm like, I remember that moment. I knew I didn't know much of anything, but I knew I could learn and I could do it.
Yep.
And that was like I think this is this is that same moment, but for people that don't have to be new at it, right?
Yeah.
It's that next level up. So
No, that is very exciting because you were right. Like there was a moment specifically when I was going through university. I thought I wanted to be a network admin, and I had an advisor that pushed me into a programming class. And partway through, amazing instructor, there was that kind of light bulb moment of this is bounded by my imagination of what I can actually go through and create. And so having that realization, just I mean, change of career path there to be able to say, hey, this is what I really want to do because I can build it if I can think it up. And so that kind of thing of being able to go is amazing. And I do really like that description there of being able to empower developers to learn, because that I think is oftentimes people leaning on the AI as a crutch rather than as an aid. And I think that kind of elevation of the developer is absolutely amazing.
yeah.
In terms of like the AI features, what is the relationship between those and like the various Visual Studio SKUs? Is there certain things that are available at the different tiers, or what does like a community user expect to have access to versus your pro or enterprise licenses?
From a Copilot perspective, it's the exact same story. You don't get more with enterprise, for instance. You get the exact same. So as with most features of Visual Studio, there's no difference between the SKUs. The difference in the SKUs are typically more around support and subscription benefits and the sort of other things. Now, there are features that are enterprise only. There are some features that exist only there. But for Copilot, it's the same.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
And then I guess you had commented a lot on the performance stuff. Is there any more kind of deeper integration? Because for a lot of developers, the biggest thing for them is actually, that text editor, getting the code into Visual Studio, the typing. Is there any improvements coming around like the IntelliSense, the integration? Because we've kind of got the Copilot, I think it's Code Suggest is the right term, the autocomplete on steroids. Can you talk about any improvements kind of around the text editing experience and IntelliSense there?
Yeah, there's like the IntelliSense is like the backbone of the Visual Studio developer experience, right? We've had it, we've loved it for a long time. So it keeps improving, and we do see people. We have different camps. There are people that like a lot of IntelliSense, and there are people that like that. We have an engineer on the team. He turns off IntelliSense. Like he's like, don't mess with my muscle memory or whatever, right? He knows exactly what, and that's so those are the two extremes. And then you have people that fall kind of in the spectrum in between somewhere. And so having the Copilot completion instance being something that is not automatically offered, but something with a hotkey you can turn on like that, like say, hey, give me a suggestion Copilot, and you just hit a keyboard shortcut instead of it automatically coming up with gray text. Hey, do you want me to insert this blob? Instead of it doing it on its own, you can have it set that it does it now behind a you hit like a keyboard shortcut and then it does it, right? So it's less kind of maybe in your muscle memory, if your muscle memory is kind of better without those type of suggestions, then this might be really handy for you, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one that people have been asking for quite a while. So we're kind of happy to get that in there.
Oh, that is amazing. As somebody who is clearly a very prolific extension author, for anyone building extensions, is there anything that they need to know in terms of having their extensions updated and brought forward?
Yes. As I was mentioning, this is probably the one of the few versions of Visual Studio ever where backwards compatibility is pretty fantastic. And so that is felt most by extenders, I'm sure, because any extension that will install into Visual Studio 2022 is going to be allowed to be installed into 2026.
Oh, wow.
Without the extension author doing anything. Which means if you have extensions that exist where the author is no longer maintaining them or whatever, you can take that extension as it is and you can install it into 2026. You'll get a little question that says, hey, this extension doesn't claim to be supported by 2026. Do you want to install it anyway? And you say yes. And of all the extensions that I've tested and I've heard of that people have been playing around with, they all work, every single one of them. Now there are some extensions that are like very large and are installed by MSIs, and they're doing some very custom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That might be there's not a lot of these extensions. Like there's 10 in the world or something. It might be more than that, but There's not very many. If you're doing a regular extension, a V6 is what they're called, and it's
Mm-hmm.
they tend to kind of just work. So that's fantastic good news. So I've been taking my most popular extensions and I made sure that I tested them all. And in the manifest where I say what version it supports, I now say, hey, this also supports 2026. And when you do that, it's a simple text change in an XML file in the manifest file. That's all you have to do. And then you won't get that question that says, hey, do you want to install anyway because it's doesn't claim to be 2026 compatible. That goes away. So you don't get that warning. But that's it. That's it. You'd still target the same SDK that you used in 2022. And so your one extension supports both 2022 and 2026 at the same time is like out of the box. That's just there. Now, if you want to take advantage of something that's brand new and only exists in 2026, we'll have some story and we'll have something coming out for that a little bit later on. But as it is right now, I would recommend you just stay with supporting your 2022 and you add the 2026 support.
Okay.
Yep.
Very easy bar for entry there, which is awesome.
Yes.
Yes. I know that's always one of my biggest fears of revving the major version of, going through all of my extensions and making sure that I'm not losing anything that I rely on. So often they've been your extensions and I don't have to wait long.
We're actually making it a little bit easier. We're attempting to do, and we're still kind of seeing what's possible. But what we're trying to do is that if you have 2022 installed right now on your machine and you want to try the preview of 2026, so you install that side by side, so they can exist on the same machine, just like this has been true for years now, many years, where you can have multiple versions of Visual Studio on the same machine. They don't interfere with each other. You can uninstall one and that doesn't change the others, and so on and so forth. So if you have 2022 and now you install 2026, 2026 will take all the settings. It will default to all the components that you have installed in 2022. So if you're an ASP.NET developer and you're doing some desktop stuff too or whatever, all those components that you have installed will mirror that for 2026 by default.
Okay.
Take your settings and take your extensions and install them as well. So as part of that installation, it's like, okay, you're like immediately just productive, right? You don't have to spend time setting things up again.
That's awesome. And so I can have 2026 and 2022 coexisting side by side and continue running perfectly.
Yeah, so this is something that's coming out. So the first preview, we're going to have some of that there, and then the second preview, and we're going to have more of that stuff coming over, being lifted over to 2026 automatically. And of course, you can say, no, don't take anything. I want like a clean install. Mm-hmm. It's like when you get a new phone, you can say, do you want to restore from a cloud backup? and
Yep.
then you get all the apps and everything. It's similar to that. But you might think, oh, that has like performance complication or implications because, I felt like some things were a little slow over there in 2022, and that might have been the way I've installed the different things. And so I don't want to do that. But that's really not how things work under like settings and stuff like that. Is like not it's not problematic from a performance perspective at all.
Okay.
Actually, this leads me into like the new settings experience we have. Used to have the tools options dialog that was kind of this ugly thing that didn't support theming and so that's completely been revamped. And and one of the things there is you can filter for performance settings. So you can see, show me just the settings that has impact on performance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that we're just in the very beginning, so you don't see that many stuff in there, but you'll see more show up.
Okay.
And that's kind of interesting. You can also see show me all the settings that have been modified, like that are not default. So even if you import settings from like 2022, for instance, you can say, hey, which one of them are not default? So maybe it's time for me to go and change some of these settings that I haven't looked at for years. Right?
Okay.
And that would be handy. That's not just an import export. It's just a general hygiene thing. Like new features come out and you might not have seen aspects of it. And so just going through that could be an interesting thing.
Yeah, I know for me, every time I see a new release drop, my first thing is I always go to the previews page on there to see what new things can I go turn on to play with, because I typically run the VS previews. I love turning preview features on. Like I've got a high tolerance for things maybe not working fully, but usually the gains from trying those new things out is amazing, right? Like typically once something drops that far, it's usually stable enough for my tolerance level, at least.
Yeah, I'm the same. I run preview and I have run it exclusively for many years, so I've not had any issues.
Is the Visual Studio Updater going to still remain the common place for doing both 2022 and 2026 updates? Is that still the release mechanism where things flow through?
And 2019, if you have that, and yep.
Okay.
And also SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS, if you have that.
Okay.
So as of SSMS 21, and now 22 that's out in preview as well, is they can all be from that installer. So they're all, and what's really great about that installer is if you're an IT admin, for instance, you can set all sorts of things up through Intune. You can manage it in a really nice way, how you take updates and all this type of stuff for all these different versions of Visual Studio that is managed by that same installer. So that's kind of neat.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Mads, I really appreciate your time of you being able to come on here. Any closing thoughts or extra things that you want to highlight?
I will say that the feedback we've gotten so far from, we send out early bits before this first preview hit the public. We send them out to the MVPs such as yourself. And the feedback we've gotten is, oh yeah, there were a few bugs. Can you fix those? And we did. So thank you for that feedback, by the way. But also that people are absolutely taken back by the speed and the beauty of the new Visual Studio. Mm-hmm. So we didn't really touch on all the new Fluent UI, the new icons, the new color themes, and it's just an absolute pleasure to work in. And I think if you've used Visual Studio before, you'll see that this is a brand new experience. It feels light, it feels modern. It's like the lines are crisp, everything is just yummy. And so I highly encourage you to try the preview. It installs side by side. Give it a try. You don't have to uninstall your old version, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised of the what you'll see there.
That is awesome. Yeah, absolutely looking forward to it. And for anybody who's wants to give it a try, it is out now. We'll go have a run. Mads, again, thank you for coming on, and everyone, happy coding.